Welcome to episode 6 of the Adventuring for Mere Mortals podcast with Kyle and Trevor. Today, our guest is Evan Thibaud. And honestly, I don't know what we're going to talk about because looking at the rough outline, it is anything and everything. So, Trev, how about you do the introduction?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So I knew Evan was a great person to bring on, and I've only called him Evan like 2 times, maybe his entire life when I was his TA back in college. But I'm just going to call him Thibaud from now on because that's what everybody calls him, and that's comfortable. But yeah, Evan, yeah, he's I'll try to describe him, but I call him an adventurer. He's a world traveler, and at least in my head, you remind me of Jim Carrey's character in Yes Man. Just like if someone says something, it's like, dude, you want to do this? You're like, yes, I'm in. You're always in for a good time.
That's a huge compliment, man. I really, really appreciate that.
Oh, good. Because that's how I vision you in my head all the time. But yeah, Evan, he went to school at Rolla with us. He was in the neighboring fraternity from me. Yeah, a few years behind me. I think you're my little brother's age.
That's right.
Roughly. Yeah, I mean, I TA'd Thibaud in college. I TA'd structural geology. So familiar and just hanging out on weekends and stuff because our 2 fraternities were friendly, which is always a good thing.
We were close.
Yeah.
Definitely different than most universities, I would say.
Yeah, for sure.
Very different.
Yeah, like we would just either groups would just walk straight over and everybody knew we were still going to have a good time no matter what. There's no animosity whatsoever. It's a good time. Good time.
I've been to many, many weddings from guys from your house as well. So very close-knit group of friends.
Yeah. But yeah, since college, man, Thibaud, you've just been all over. Like I don't think we'll be able to hit everything you've done, but like the things that jump out to me, I know you've done running with the bulls a couple times, skydiving. You got stuck in Europe over COVID, so I'm sure we're going to hit on that at some point. But man, there's just so much stuff. So yeah, I guess give us a little summary of how you would describe yourself, what you're into, all that stuff.
Well, I appreciate the intro and the kind words. I mean, growing up watching Jim Carrey is always like kind of the energy that I've always enjoyed putting out. That's a nice little compliment right there. Definitely an idol of mine when it comes to making people laugh. And I definitely do try to say yes to everything. That's something I've learned is, saying yes to my own ideas and saying yes to other people's ideas has opened opportunities for me, like professionally, and then in my adventures. So many opportunities that I've actually had was because I just winged it and said yes. It's worked out. I mean, I'm still here and I think I'm doing well. I feel like I'm doing well. There's some things that aren't doing well, but in general, saying yes is big. So when I graduated from college, I took a job opportunity that paid less in order to travel. So I took a job and I moved directly to Canada. It turns out I had a professional career in a ski town, which I think I was very, very lucky. Yeah. And that kind of grew into a different, my parents were both skiers. I was actually, I went home from the hospital when I was born at Stevens Pass Ski Resort on a snowmobile. So yeah, so my she's a badass, and my dad was a ski instructor, and so we really are kind of like a mountain family, and moved to Tennessee when I was young. So when I went back out west after college, that was a nice feeling. And then I took a job. I left that town, unfortunately, because I wanted some career development, and I took an opportunity in Labrador, and I was working 18 days on, 18 days off. And which is kind of crazy, 18 days in a row, 12 hours a day, and minus 40 to 60 degree Celsius. Like your eyelids freeze, and and so the 18 days off, I was like, what else am I going to do? So I just started booking flights, and I never left the United States until after I graduated college. We were sitting there in the living room, in the den in college, which you partied in quite a few times. And one of my fraternity brothers, he said, "Hey, I'm going to go to Southeast Asia." And I was like, "Can I come?" After a few beers, I said, "Yeah." And he's like, "Sure." So I think I booked a flight like the next day, never left the United States, had no idea what I was signing up for. And, arrived in Thailand and then spent a month traveling Thailand, Cambodia, Laos, and Indonesia. And so that's when I really caught the travel bug. My family, we were very outdoorsy, and we did a lot of traveling as a family, camping and things like that. And I was a member of Boy Scouts, which really helped introduce me into a lot of aspects of the woods and feeling comfortable being in the woods, feeling safe. And then, but it wasn't until after that I caught a travel bug. And then for those 18 days on, 18 days off, I would just fly to some country that almost the cheapest flight that I could.
That's awesome.
And then that just stemmed into this love of learning abroad that I can't get enough of, because I don't know. I mean, you guys have, experienced, and that's, I think, why you started this podcast, is to show how amazing it can be to go outside to something new. And I don't know, I always try to relate it to feeling like a kid in a playground for the first time. You just look around and you're like, whoa, look at the jungle gym, and we're adults, and you still feel that way when you come into a new place with a new language, a new culture, new geology, things like that. And that's kind of my background of where I've, like, why I guess I'm on this podcast, I think.
Yeah, no, like I would summarize that as just, you can capture the joy, and you still like experiencing that joy of experiencing new things. And that's great. That's one of the things we're trying to get people to experience when they go on outside, like experience all the great things that are about the outside.
And it's also about, like, learning, I mean, I think that there's aspects of adulthood that we get into, we get kind of pigeonholed into a career. And then most of our learning stems from that career and trying to specialize in that career, which doesn't really work very well in conversation with people who are not inside that same career set. So that conversation, so your personal growth kind of pigeonholes yourself into a certain conversation. And then you might have some other things that you can relate, like if you're a homeowner and things like that. But when you travel, you really step outside of that, and you're learning hands-on. You're a tactile learner. And I have a learning disability. I have something like dyslexia. It's a reading comprehension. So, like, learning hands-on and being able to experience things, I think that's a really good learning opportunity as well. So if I wanted to, I could watch a million YouTube videos, and I call everything YouTube University anyways, because if I can't open anything without trying to look up a YouTube video about it first, right? So that's one of the main things. So experiencing the joy, but also to continue learning as an adult is huge. And also, like, to try new sports. I've always really applauded my friends who learn skiing when they're an adult, or they learn a new sport as an adult, because most of us learn something as a kid, and then we get good at it. We stick to what we're good at, and we feel like idiots when we try to learn a new sport, and we're clumsy and like, man, I know I could do this. And then we just use old age as an excuse. But, like, there's something physiologically or mentally stimulating about learning something new as a sport, right? So that's another thing that
I'm very guilty of, like, so basketball is probably my favorite sport. And
you ball, dude.
I've been playing it for years.
I've seen you on the court.
I'm still, I just had ACL surgery, and in a few months I'm planning on going back to playing basketball because it's what I'm good at. And so I haven't been pushing myself to learn other new sports. Maybe I've decided I'll pick up golf when I've given up on like my more active type
Whoa,
sports.
low blow.
Hey, that's all about finesse.
Yeah, no, that's like the muscle. I think I can handle like the muscle memory part, and it does take skill. I'm not saying it doesn't take skill, but it's just a different style of sport than like a basketball type thing.
There's not much cardio. Let's just say that.
Yeah, you can walk your clubs. It's fine.
Hey man, the Bowmans, you guys know how to ball. I'll tell you that right now. I've tried to play you guys. I get swatted down every time.
Well, all right. Before we get rolling on stuff, let's catch up. So, Kyle, what have you been up to, man?
Not a whole lot. Really just in survival mode. We've had some crazy weather here. It gets into the 70s and 80s, and then a couple days later, it's 4 inches of snow. So, yeah, we had, I think it was last week, 4 inches of snow here in town where I live. And then up in the mountains, it was 18 inches. That they had up at the ski resort.
It's a dream.
Yeah. So
put the skis on, man.
Yeah.
If it snows and then it goes back to 80.
Yeah. So not a whole lot. And I'm sort of like pacing myself because I know basically for the entire month of June I'm going to be gone.
Mm-hmm.
There'll be more on that in the next episode. Well, what about you, Trev? Are you all moved in?
What define moved in? So all of our boxes and stuff are here in the house, but most of it's still in boxes. So we've been slowly going through that, but finally I'm through closing on my house in Louisiana, closing on the one up here in Illinois. So then all of our stuff is moved in, but yeah, we've just been going through all the boxes, trying to find everything the way where we want everything. And I have a little bit of like OCD when it comes to like having everything in the house fixed the correct way. So I see every little thing that's wrong, quote unquote, wrong with this house that I want to fix. So that's taken up a lot of my time. But on Saturday, I'm leaving to go to Alaska for a week. I'm going on a Disney cruise with the family. So that'll be real fun. It's not like pure Alaska, but it is a good time. And the kids will enjoy it. We'll get to see seals and hopefully some whales. And
no, you will see many whales.
Yeah. My wife and I went on this same cruise in 2018 when my daughter was like, I want to say she was just shy of 2. She stayed with the grandparents, and that was like our babycation or whatever. And we're like, yeah, we're definitely coming back with all the kids. So my kids are coming. My 2 sister-in-laws and my mother-in-law are coming. So we can kind of play zone defense with the kids. So each of us can have a break at some point, so we don't have to just watch the kids constantly. But
is it from Juneau or
no? We're going to fly to Seattle and then we were supposed to take like an Amtrak train along the Puget Sound from Seattle to Vancouver, where we're taking off. But because of COVID, that Amtrak line isn't running, so we're going to take a bus from Seattle to Vancouver. Less scenic, hopefully less scenic than the train.
The ferry?
I don't know. This is just the options that the cruise port gives us. So, and then we'll fly. Is it? Okay. Yeah. I know that
I think if you have a car, it's not that. If you don't have a car, it's not that expensive. I think the car is the expensive part. I don't know, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm not in charge of any of that planning. Like most of my other trips, I'm normally in charge of. My wife's in charge of anything Disney trip related. That's her court. So, but yeah, we're excited. We'll have a good time. Very excited. So.
And how's the physio coming along?
It's coming along up here. I need to find a new PT place up here, but what was that? 2 days ago? Yeah, 2 days ago, I did my first quote unquote run since my surgery. So I was doing and it was a jog, but I would run like 0.2 of a mile. My knee would get tired. I'd walk for 1/10 of a mile. And then I did that. I think I did 1.6 miles, and my knee didn't like swell up, but it was just really tired.
That's more running than I've done in a few weeks.
And it was actually really hard to keep my body from, like, if I would zone out, I would try to go back to like my normal pace before I had surgery. I was like, hold on, Trevor, slow down. 9-minute mile is where you need to sit at. That's comfortable. So my heart rate didn't get up, but I was just kind of like being conscious of my knee, so I didn't push it too hard. But yeah. So
that's impressive, man.
Baby steps. Still, I'm not like juking side to side. That's the one I really need to strengthen. The straightforward I can handle. But the ACL, that's your lateral movement. So
The Larry
that's
Bird
coming next.
passes. When you can start passing like Larry Bird again, that would be your. Okay, I got you.
But yeah, Evan, what you been up to, man? I know you always got something cooking.
Yeah, I came back. I had a nice business trip and fun trip. It's like a mix. I'm trying to mix all my trips together now. I spent a few months out west at some explosives conference in Vegas, and then another conference in Salt Lake City. So I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna go skiing in between then and meet some customers, do some I guess research, some customer research out there, and then so I got the Epic Pass. It was the first time ever buying one of those, and I got an opportunity to visit so many ski resorts that I've never been able to visit before in my life. So I was very blessed. The season, snow-wise, the snow report wasn't the best, but I mean, I'm from Tennessee, so
Yeah.
I'm used to that Appalachian ice, right? And all West Coast or Rocky Mountain skiing, whether it be Salt Lake or Colorado, all that is amazing to me. And then, so now I'm back in Tennessee, back with family and friends, and I'm doing a lot of canoeing and caving. The tri-state area here is some of the best caves in the world. So I got to do some really amazing caves with a friend of mine who works for his name's Aiden. He works for the Cave Conservation Southeast Caves Conservatory.
Nice.
And so he can take me to some amazing caves and really unbelievable. And then I got a buddy's canoe, and I've been canoeing along the creeks here in Chattanooga, and just lucky, extremely lucky with these. They're less than 30 minutes outside of town, backed up against a national park, and I see
Nice.
water snakes, beavers, a bald eagle, and I get off this is a 4-hour canoe trip, and I get Panera Bread right at the bottom. Like right at the Buffalo Wild Wings. Sorry, it was B-Dubs. So like it's just it's kind of a hidden. No one really does it. I don't know why. Maybe because there was too many hypodermic needles in this creek at one point. I don't know, but you don't swim in it. It's not like a Missouri float trip by any means. But yeah, so I've just been taking advantage of how amazing Chattanooga is during this time of year, and being close to family and building my company. So that's what I've been up to, and trying to plan what the next adventures are, which I've got an idea for that too.
Oh, that's awesome. But yeah, I mean, you mentioned Chattanooga, and Chattanooga is like one of my favorite cities too. It really is kind of a hidden gem. Like at the end of our last hiking trip, I was like, Kyle, we need to go to Chattanooga because Chattanooga's dope. And yeah, we ended up spending a night. We were just real quick in and out, but it was a good time. And
you can crash on my sailboat if you guys come through.
Oh yeah, are you still living on sailboat?
Well, you're probably too damn tall, man. I don't think you'd like it.
Yeah, I'd sit on the deck.
It's just enough for me, I think. Yeah, I'm not on it. I'm not on it as much as I used to be, but it's kind of like my escape, my little weekend getaway thing now.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, yeah. How long did you live on the sailboat?
It was about a year, and then, but I was traveling a lot for work, so it was kind of like I could just, I'd come back and have a nice place to stay right on the Tennessee River. Paid only $500 a month.
Oh, nice.
I had parking, bathroom, Wi-Fi, and a free electric shuttle took me anywhere in town. I mean, it was a score. I wanted to do tiny home lifestyle, and I couldn't afford that. Instead, I bought a sailboat, and I had only sailed 1 nautical mile in my life prior to buying a sailboat. I didn't even know what the hell I was doing. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to do this. I was coming back from a trip to Alaska, and on the same flight, one of my connecting flights was my friend's father, who I hadn't seen in, 10 years. He's a sailor. He's been sailing around the world. He's placed in races all around the United States.
Wow.
Yeah, he got first place in some big race around Michigan, and he happened to be on the same flight that I was on the day before I was trying to pull the trigger whether or not I wanted to buy a sailboat or not. So
wow,
yeah,
it's like the universe is making the decision.
Exactly. I don't know what you believe in, but there's that's some and he was like, "Oh, this is great, do it," and I'm so glad I did. I mean, I've had lots of problems with the boat. It's a boat, so pretty obvious. break out another 1,000. That's what they stand for. So, but it was a lot cheaper than renting an apartment, and it was a lot cheaper than buying a tiny home. So it ended up being a really good investment. And
What'd you end
yeah,
up getting?
I got a 28-foot Columbia. So it's similar to a Catalina, like the Catalina wine mixer. Yeah. And actually here in Chattanooga, there's a bluegrass festival. We took the sailboat down to it and had a big party, and we called it the Chattanooga wine mixer because it's all banjos and blue jeans, baby.
That's great.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Tie-dyed shirts and overalls. Yeah, man, it was awesome. So and also that's another thing that actually ties in perfectly with this podcast is kind of the idea of I didn't know anything about sailing. I said yes, right? And I just went for it, bought the boat, and figured I'd learn. And that's exactly what I did. I didn't, like every sport or everything, there's a lot of people who are pretentious about it. So there's and they're the ones who don't kind of make you feel welcome when you're trying to learn. But then there's a huge group of people who are the opposite of that. So
awesome.
Sometimes the loud people are the ones who are kind of the pretentious ones. But then there's like a whole communities of people who do that same sport on a budget versus the people who do that same sport with a huge budget. And I mean, I just got an opportunity. There's this thing called Sailboat Hitchhikers. It's a group on Facebook, and you join this group, and you say, this is literally what I did. I didn't know anything about sailing, and I wanted to go to my friend's wedding in Istanbul. And I just went on there, posted a photo, said, hey, I'm an Eagle Scout. I like to have a good time, and I can learn things. So can I get on a boat? And I ended up hitchhiking on a boat across the Atlantic Ocean. And I had sailed less than 2 nautical miles in my life, which, mind you, that's excessive. Don't get me wrong. That isn't excessive. And that was ballsy, and that scared the shit out of me. But at the same time, like, that's how open and it is to learn a new sport if you just ask and you find the right platforms and forums and opportunities. So that was really, really lucky.
I mean, and that's a really good point. Like, I've seen it in numerous different, I'll call them communities, that, like you said, there are the pretentious people, the people that are the gatekeepers that don't want other people to come in and do their quote unquote cool thing. But there's also a lot of people that are just stoked to teach other people about the cool thing that they love too. So
Absolutely.
You just got to find them, right?
Yeah, I think a lot of people love, like myself, I love to teach people what I know and what I've learned. Like, it's half the fun sometimes is showing someone else and then seeing the joy on their face when they watch a sailboat turns like list over from the wind, and they're like, oh, now we're sailing. We just spent 4 hours out here in the sun in the heat because there's no wind, and then all of a sudden the wind picks up and the whole boat shifts over, people's drinks spill over and everything, and you're like, people are like, whoa, and you're like, this is sailing. And then people are like, oh, okay, this is actually pretty fun. It's not just floating, right? So those are the kind of things, and you see that look on their face. So I think a lot of people really like that, and it translates to so many other sports and activities.
Yeah. Well, one thing that jumped out at me whenever we first started chatting before we actually started recording was, and you kind of hinted at it, the youth-like experience again. That excitement of learning something, doing something new for the first time. It actually was sailing for me. That gave that experience and going out, and actually I took a lesson, but awesome. it was actually getting out there, and then you do the classroom stuff, and then he literally took us out to the middle of Lake Pleasant, and it was myself, my girlfriend at the time, her dad, and then another guy, just a random guy, and he stops and he goes, okay, who's up?
Yeah.
and like, that was it. He's like, you don't learn to sail from a book. You learn by doing. And he goes, so let's go. And so that's what we did. And I remember just like being a giddy little kid once the, sails fill and you start moving forward, you're like, oh, I did something right. And, I'm actually doing this and I'm doing it right. And then you go and then you get a little bit better at it. And yeah, it was fantastic.
Yeah, it's so cool. And then there's this whole language that is absolutely terrifying and burdensome, trying to learn the different terms of sailing and just like any sport, you're trying to learn all these terms and you're like, I don't know what to do. And they're
Yeah.
like, grab the main sheet. And you're like, what are you talking about? Fitted sheets or comfort,
And then you stand there and you're like, you're like reaching for things and you're like looking like, is this what you want? No. Oh, this one? Yeah. Oh,
Yeah, they're
okay.
like, the red one,
Yeah.
grab the red one. You're like, oh, okay. So it's and sometimes there's like, and then they're yelling, prepared attack, and you're like, and everyone's ducking, and then they're yelling at you to duck. So there's like some pretty awesome aspects of that, and it's just it's fun when you're with the right crowd and they're not trying to make you feel stupid, or if and that's awesome that you took a lesson, because that means you put yourself out there. You actually stepped outside of your comfort zone, and sounds like you even had to pay for it, which is also another
Mhm.
thing that intimidates some people. It's like, I don't know if it's gonna be worth it. That's quite a monetary value, right? But you're like, you just said, like, that was the last time you felt like quite youth like, and that's the thing, is when you're out there learning new things, you feel like a kid again. And I think a lot more people need to feel that. There's a lot of sad things going on in the world today. There's a lot of
Yeah.
people who are unhealthy. We got a lot of problems in the world today. And I think that if you can step outside and go learn a new sport or go visit a new place that you've never seen before, even if it's just down the road, it's a park that you haven't been to, then you're going to end up feeling a lot better.
Yeah.
I love that. So we've only hit on a couple things that you've done. So a lot of these things, like you've said it yourself, that were just terrifying. So I guess, do you have like, how do you deal with that fear? Like sometimes when people are scared of things, you just get lock up and just like crippling fear. Do you have like, I'll call them methods or ways that you handle it or deal with it?
Oh, that's a good question.
While you think about that, I actually thought about this earlier this week, and I have two different responses that I've noticed. So I have
Good.
at work, whenever it's something that makes me uncomfortable or whatever, my reaction is the brain starts going. It's not really a panic, but I can't even describe it. It's just this, like, I can't even control my thoughts. Like, it's on autopilot, things like that. But whenever I'm outside and I'm in somewhat hairy situations and things like that, for me, like, time has slowed and it's a very clear thought process. Like, I need to do this first. I need
Absolutely.
to do this second. I need to do this third. And there's not that jumbled mess up in my head. And I don't know why, but it happened, and I was like, why am I struggling with this so hard? Because if this is on a backpacking trip or something like that, outside, I would totally be able to handle this, no issue. Like, why am I struggling now? That was
Because
the work mindset
I
versus
completely relate to that. Do you have you ever like thought of yourself as possibly OCD or ADHD? So I think I read something once about that having something to do with that. Is when you're under a certain amount of pressure, you perform better, and that's kind of where I think I'm at. Is that I can second guess every decision and have this certain level of perfection, struggle with this perfectionism, where if I don't do it perfectly, then I don't really want to do it, and then that stems into procrastination, right? But when you put yourself in that type of situation, or that situation puts itself in front of you, whether you like it or not, you can't delay in your thought process. And I don't know, I think it might have something to do with survival. I mean, animal instincts kicked in, right?
yeah.
And so I don't know. There's definitely some studies on this, and I remember seeing something about that. But I think that you're right on spot. Like your brain, I hyperfixate. Like I start to everything gets clear. There's the decision making becomes very crystal clear. And I mean, professionally, I get paid to be decisive. That's what I do. And I think engineering also teaches you that as well. Um, and so when you know that you have a lot of time to make decisions, you go through a lot of the processes, and then you're like, okay, all right. But then when you don't have a lot of time, I think that brain power kicks in, and you say like, okay, this is an idea, and you're like, nope, doesn't work. And you're like, other idea, and your brain, you're going through all these you're going through this flow chart in your brain. It's just like, not gonna happen. This is gonna happen. Okay. Or I don't know, like, okay, so I was a lifeguard. That had something to do with it. So I was kind of trained a fairly young age. I did have a leg up in Boy Scouts. So at a very young age, they taught you emergency preparedness. And so when you're young and you get an opportunity and your parents raise you to go do things outside and to play different games, that you learn, if you just play sports, it teaches you about decision making on the whim, whether to pass the ball or hold the ball, things like that. So I think that just starts to grow. And when I get into some really sketchy situation, I can hyper focus, like you just said, and you make a decision. And I think being decisive helps me mitigate some of the fears. I really, like when you were talking to me, like, hey, what should we really talk about? I said, like, fear is one of the major things that I love to talk about. And I feel like it has such a stronghold on our choices, and we don't even know how much it impacts our life and our finances and everything. Right. And so I think that when I get put in those fearful situations, I try to realize, like, shit, I'm scared. And I kind of like it. It's weird. It's like this. I don't know if it's like I don't think it's masochistic. What's masochism? But it's like my heart starts racing and I feel alive.
That rush.
You feel the adrenaline. It's insane. I must say that it's an addiction. And just to know that you're scared and to think about it and to realize that you're scared and then that's affecting your decisions is one of the number one things. And when you are scared and you're like, and you can see when people panic, there's like nothing in their eyes. It's weird. It's almost like they're just drunk and they're seeing through you, and they're just shaking and everyone, some people just flee, like fight or flight. And some people just freeze, like you just said. But so you can kind of tell. And then if you can say in your brain, like, this is fear, then you get an opportunity to then assess how that's impacting you.
Yes. So I just learned this, that actually in the human brain, I don't remember the parts, but we sense the world around us with our eyes, our ears, smell, taste, touch. But whenever our brain perceives a threat and it's going to trigger that fight or flight, whenever it's received in whatever way, if it's a sound or usually visual cue or something like that, or like if you touch your hand to a hot plate, you receive it and it doesn't go through the whole process in your brain. It gets hijacked and it goes to that decision-making point right there where it's reactionary. I need to do this.
Wow.
And so that's one thing that I noticed in, like, outside, and you're in a situation that makes you uncomfortable. I can, like, focus myself, calm myself down. And then what that does is usually about 10 seconds. You need about 10 seconds to override that hijack and then actually go through the rational thinking part of the brain to make a good decision. And like, I do that. I learned that I do that instinctively outside. Professionally, it's a lot harder for me, like at work and things like that. And I noticed myself being very reactionary at work, but not outside. And
interesting.
It was really cool. The other thing that you touched on, and I thought it was kind of like propaganda, but one of my coworkers recommended reading Mindsets, and they kind of discuss about talk about that in there. Thibaud, you're living in a growth mindset as it's described. You don't look at things as a right or wrong. It's an experience. You're going to learn something from it, good, bad, and you're going to move on. Versus that paralysis that you're talking about, they attribute that to a fixed mindset, and it's kind of one of those things. Well, if I never try, I can't fail.
Interesting.
So yeah, I'll send you a link to that. But yeah, I just finished that, and it's kind of
Wow.
crazy that we're talking about it now.
Yeah, I mean, it's to be able to look at that, that is something how that's funny that you say that, because I do actually kind of look at things and say, I failed quite a few classes at Rolla. All right. I'm just gonna go ahead and say that. Like, failure, I got pretty comfortable with it because I had to accept it, and I couldn't believe, I graduated, but I did not do well with seeing those scores on my tests, and on my report cards, or whatever you want to call it. And so now when I think of failure, I really do. I listen to all those, Instagram influencers and those motivational speakers, because it sounds cheesy, but a lot of times they're right. It's like, if you're not failing or you're not screwing something up, you're probably not learning or testing yourself enough. And then if you're going to be around the people who insult you, or if you're in a team that punishes you for failing, then you learn quick that that's not a growth mindset of a team, and you might need to step out.
No, absolutely, man. And it seems like I'll call it recontextualizing. Say, we'll use the example of failing a class at Rolla because you brought it up. You could just say, oh, I failed this class. My life is over. I'm going to drop out. You could just very quickly go
Yeah, I
down
said
that
yes.
pit. So instead you go, okay, I failed this class. Okay, not the greatest outcome, but you can say, take it back. What did I learn from this? It's like, oh, well, maybe the next time I take the class, I should study more, or I'll be a little more familiar with the material next time. And you can learn, instead of just going down into the pit of despair immediately, you learn, okay, what did I take away from this that's positive? You find the silver lining, and then you move on rather than, so that's what I mean by recontextualizing.
Gotcha. Yeah. And then that, that same mindset that works in a classroom setting does translate into real world settings. It does translate into learning a sport, and when you're outside and you're learning new sports, you accept failure a little bit more, and you accept risk taking a little bit more. And I don't mean risk as an unsafe risk, but like
mitigate your risk.
Yeah, I mean, risk to be able to put yourself out there and then fail, right? So you're putting yourself in a position where failure can occur, instead of the opposite of just staying at watching Netflix, or something. I say, one of my biggest regrets or failures I've had is I did a hang gliding school here in Chattanooga. It's the #1 hang gliding school in the world, or largest hang gliding school in the world, and I signed up for it and everything, and I didn't complete it. I don't know. I had a few excuses, and I just went with it, and so I didn't do it. And I was like, I mean, it's the mountain's right there. I like look at it, but I still haven't gone back to finish the class, just because I've talked myself kind of out of it, And so it's one of the few things that I set out to do that I haven't done, right? And I don't know why, but it's something that I did fail on. So I don't know. That was one of those tangents we said we get off on, but
No, and that's good. And you mentioned the hang gliding school. I think, is that the one you suggested?
Yes.
And we did. So we went for our buddy Alex, his bachelor party. We ended up going hang gliding with the hang glide Lookout Mountain, I believe is what it's
right.
called. Yeah. And that was awesome. So thank you very much for that. That was a great experience, because I had never hang glide before at all. And it's great.
It's so cool. And it's like, and that's another thing where, you can learn to hang glide for $600. You can go to a class and learn hang glide. Or you can pay like $150. I think I got you guys a super sweet discount, actually, because it was how many of you guys went. And it can be as wild as you want it to be, or it can be as calm and like unbelievably soothing. I mean, you're floating in the sky. It's a life hack, It is a life hack, and you're a bird in the sky catching the thermals, and you're just sitting there, and it's oddly quiet, and you're thinking that you're going to be scared, but it's peaceful.
Yeah.
And you're like, all right, okay. And then he hits, then
like a
then
slight
it's
shift in weight and
boom,
zoom.
and you're, but only if you want to,
Yeah.
And then they tow you up as behind a plane with a pull cord, like you're a kite,
Yeah.
like you're a key on a kite in an experiment with lightning, with a founding father. That's what you feel like. You're getting pulled out behind a plane. You're like, this is just ridiculous. Why did I sign up for this? And then they pull the little knot, right? The little release, and then you're just like doop, 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 doop. And your little altimeter just like shuts off. It stops you because you're not going up anymore. You're not going down. You're just kind of this nice little boop, boop. It's such a cool feeling. I highly recommend it to anybody.
Same. We had a lot of fun. It was really, really great.
There was a few people in the group who didn't go, right?
Yeah, I think it only ended up being 4 of us that wanted to do it. People I did my best shaming of people, but they didn't budge.
Yeah, so, I try not to really shit on them too much, but really, man, you got this opportunity, you gotta take it, and you get scared. That's the point. You're doing it because you get scared. That's the point. Sign up for it. Get scared and then land and be like, wow, that was amazing. I'm addicted. Maybe I'm going to sign up and let's get a photo and then find out what other random friends you have on Facebook that have also done it. And I don't know. It's just
that connection you go. And especially for something like that, it's like you can be scared in a controlled environment because we weren't flying them. We had the pilot. I guess it's a pilot. I would assume is the correct term for it, but they're the one actually controlling it. But you're along for the ride, and it was cool. He let me actually steer a little bit when we were up at the top. Yeah. So it's cool. You get that experience. But if there were any real danger, that guy would take over and we'd go.
Yeah. So. And there's a parachute on it as well. Yeah. And, the guy's professional. And that's another thing as we talk about fear is we have, this thing just doesn't make sense, right? Humans don't belong up there. We know that, so instinctively we're like, no, I'm not doing that. No. So you have to overcome that and say, okay, this is the hang glide, the wing of a hang glider was what was correct. I think, fact check this, but I'm pretty sure it was invented by someone in NASA when they were inventing the space shuttle. So that's the perfect wing that's made, and so it's a very strong and proper type of device that's utilized for this type of thing. And for you to step outside and sign up for it and go to it, you're putting yourself in a risky situation, but you only realize it because it's out of your normal day-to-day risky situations. Yes. You driving to work is by far the most dangerous thing you do in your life, I think.
100%.
I tell people that all the time. People are like, oh my God, you're an explosives engineer. You get to blow things up for a living. That's amazing. But isn't it dangerous? I'm like, listen, that's not even in the top 10 most dangerous industries anymore. And the most dangerous part of my job is driving to work.
Yeah.
And, you look at the statistics when it comes to hang gliding, skydiving, any of these really fun these, adrenaline type events that people are so terrified to do, they're actually very controlled. Gravity is one of your only variables, unlike some teenager who's texting, TikToking while they're down the road and putting on some sort of makeup or, texting their side chick or something. I don't know. Who knows, right? There's a lot of other variables that you can't control on the road, but that don't exist when you're flying. And so people are scared of it because it's not their day-to-day routine, but they're actually in a lot more risk doing what they're used to, and they just haven't quite realized it. And that's something that helps me overcome a lot of fears, actually, is rationalizing it. If that answers your question too, later down the road.
Hey, no.
Full circle.
Yeah, no. That's great, dude. So you mentioned you're an explosive engineer, and I'll just put it out there that you started your own company. That's another terrifying thing.
Oh, yeah, it is. Yeah, it's very much a scary thing.
So yeah, like give us a down low on
All right. So
like as much as you want, I guess.
it's called New Wave Consulting. I've built it as a bridge between like innovators and end users. So the people who are creating all this amazing technology versus the people who are actually in the field doing and applying their knowledge, right? So there's a huge gap between that. There's all these creators and innovators that are just developing with the technology and the processing of in today's age, but it's not necessarily trickling down fast enough to people who are in the field or operators, right? And so I'm trying to take this technology and increase the adoption curve of some of this. And it's a struggle. It's an absolute struggle. And the real reason I started the company actually was because I was getting laid off from a company and I didn't know it. And a project came my way. And the company I was with at the time just was not open to doing this project at all. We were simulating tire ruptures, like a blowout. That's not the proper term, but we were simulating tire blowouts on semi trucks at highway speeds. So we're trying to get a semi truck to go 60 miles an hour, and we're trying to blow the front tire off of it, essentially. And my company was like, "That's not commercially viable." And I was like, "Yeah, but it's pretty good money, and this is what I got a master's degree in explosives engineering for. And like, this is, I wouldn't say easy, but like, this is why I'm here. This is why I'm on the team." And then I found out that they were restructuring the company, quote unquote, or whatever. And I wasn't going to be part of that restructure. So when I got let go, the company was like, "Hey, well, what are we going to do? Can you still do this?" And I was like, let me make some phone calls.
Yeah.
So I made some phone calls and started a company in a few weeks and just utilized an amazing team of people in Georgia. Just a huge group of people that I, from connections that I reached out to and was able to start this company. And by no means, I mean, I'm still in business.
That's good, son.
Yeah, I'm still in business. I've sacrificed a lot of salary in order to have this type of lifestyle and this type of and have a business. And there's lots of fears and stresses, but in general, it's just like we're talking about accepting failures and like learning the hard ways and everything. It's scary, and there's a lot of things that aren't going right, and then there's a lot of things that are going right. Like I get to spend a lot more time with family and go on a lot more adventures, and I've accepted less of a salary and less stability in order to have that type of lifestyle. And I get to take projects that I want to take.
Yeah.
I don't have to, a good friend of mine, he also is part of a small explosives company. And he said to me, he goes, "Well, if you're going to work for an asshole, you should be the asshole."
Hey, I
thought that was really funny. I know, right? He goes, "I don't even remember saying that to you."
That's fair.
But yeah, and so I don't know. There's a lot of fears associated with that. And I don't know. I would never say that I'm an expert in it, and by any means, but I'm struggling with sales. There's a huge struggle when it comes to adoption, right? Like I'm learning all about the adoption curves and who are early adopters and what type of person is an early adopter versus who isn't. Getting people to adopt the technology that I'm promoting is very, very difficult. The sales cycles are long. So it's the same kind of issues that maybe with fear and convincing someone to go on an amazing ski trip or to go try a new sport. You're trying to get them to overcome fears, but this time it's fear of losing money or fear of getting reprimanded at work. Or they don't know it well enough, or maybe they don't know anyone else who's using it. So they're like, "Wait, who else is using it? I don't want to be the guinea pig. I don't want to be the one who tries it." Right. So that's the same thing. Like when you go bungee jumping, I mean, you don't want to be the first one on the bungee jump. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know about you, but I think bungee jumping is fun. But at the same time, like being the first one to jump off the bridge that day is kind of like, I'll be the second person, So it's kind of like one of those things.
No, I see that type of technology adoption in my job right now. So I won't name the company so I don't have to go through all that, but basically a large older company. And
Yes.
new technology is the last thing that they want to do. They want to see other smaller companies that are less risk averse than them. They want to see them try them out first,
Mhm.
and then will work their way up to the bigger and bigger companies until they get to us. It's
And
like,
then
okay,
they'll adopt it. Yeah.
yeah, then they'll adopt it. So it's, and
Absolutely.
I've spent a big part of my career pushing newer technologies and pushing, mostly to end up frustrated. But now I've just learned I have to do it myself. And then
Yeah.
if I get my hand slapped, I get my hand slapped. It's like, no, it's like I end up doing it as side gigs, side projects within my job. It's like I get my main work done. Then I'm like,
Mhm.
okay, I'm going to do this thing on the side. If you're cool with it, boss, that's cool. As long as I get my other stuff done, you shouldn't care anyway. But
Yeah.
It's
And that's the sales method. That's how you had to strategize it for him or for
yeah,
whoever, right? So you got to come up with a new method to convince someone to do something. And it's just the same thing that we're talking about here, trying to convince people to go outside. You got to approach it from all these different angles, because some people it's about fear or about safety. Some people it's about experience. Everyone has their different money. A lot of times it's about money, man. People can't
yeah.
afford to do new things, or
Mm-hmm.
they can afford to do it. They just prioritize their finances differently, right?
Yep.
And that,
They know the tried and true method's going to work, and they know how
yeah.
much it's going to cost. The cost shouldn't balloon or anything like that. They just know have no more information, so they're
And
comfortable.
I don't have a problem with that if they're being successful, or they're like in business, or if they're, let's say, happy, if they're currently happy in their current lifestyle. I don't have a problem with that. Like, if you don't want to go learn how to ski because you're completely happy being a surfer, I get it. But if you're not happy with where you're at in life, why not try something new? If your business isn't doing well, why not try something new? You know what I mean? Like,
Yep.
those are the things that frustrates me, that if I see someone who isn't happy or they're not doing something and you can tell, and then they still don't do it, that's the frustrating part to me. Now, if they're just bliss and they're just loving life the way they are, doing whatever it is that they're doing, I can't judge them for that,
Yeah, that's fair.
I feel like you guys are in my head. And have been there for like the past 3 weeks. Yeah.
Fighting against the man.
Right?
I think this all kind of always comes back to that. Keep staying in that growth mindset. And growth mindset can be scary at some points.
It's very scary.
Yeah, but being scared is how you grow a lot of times too. Like, not all fear is bad.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why I say I love talking about fear, because I don't know, there's so many other aspects and ways to relate to it, and different types of fear too,
Mm-hmm. For sure.
Like, for example, I always say that there's 2 types of fear. Now, obviously, this is coming from me, who has no understanding or like psychological background. Okay. So you can take my story for a story as it is, but this is just in my opinion. Okay. So I think there's kind of like 2 types of fear, maybe 3. I don't know. Okay. So you have trauma, okay, like traumatic experiences that have now ingrained into your brain and memory, right? So you get in a car accident and you no longer feel comfortable driving. I've got a story for that. A pretty epic story for that. That might be the next podcast. And so you have like traumatic experiences, right? It's like actually life lesson experiences that you have experienced that you can't quite control because it's like post-traumatic. And there's been lots of studies on that. But then I think that the other type of fear, or the other 2 types of fear, is kind of one that I consider learned or childhood fear. And this stems off of a kind of like, okay, you say, all right, what's my biggest fear, right? If you were to ask me what my biggest fear is, and I would say, oddly enough, I have like a stupid fear, aka my childhood fear, and it's the bottom of a lake. Something about the squishy mud and murky and everything, I hate it. And I live on a damn sailboat. I sleep in a house that can sink. I don't know why I'm okay with that, but jumping in a lake and it's a little bit shallower than I expected, and my feet touch the bottom. I hate it. I think it's probably from some old scary movies that I watched. And I know that here in Tennessee, all these lakes used to be some farm and things like that. So there's a lot of houses. So I think that has a lot to do with. So there's these childhood stupid fears.
Yeah.
And then there's like learned fears, which are ones that, okay, so the childhood fears are ones that you somehow grew as a kid that don't have a lot of basis. Like it doesn't really make sense. You know what I mean? It's just there, and you've always been afraid of it, and you never really addressed it. A lot of people are afraid of heights, you know, and that stemmed from a really young age, right? Yeah. Okay. So, you know, actually addressing it and going and hang gliding like yourself, if you're afraid of heights and you go hang gliding, you're addressing that fear and you're like, oh my God, that was such an amazing experience. And you're a little less afraid of heights now.
Yep, exactly. So yeah, well, I didn't vocalize it, but I pointed at myself when Thibaud was saying afraid of heights. Because yeah, when I was a kid, I was terrified of heights. Like going up tall, shaky ladders, I would just grip the ladder, and which is weird from coming from like a tall guy that I'm afraid of heights. It seems weird, but
you're a foot taller than me, man.
Yeah. So like I've made it a point to try to do these more height type scary things. Like if you go on top of a skyscraper, yeah, I'm going to lean out onto and try to look straight down to try to like push my comfort level a little bit. And yeah, as I've got older, I've got a little less afraid. Every once in a while you get that vertigo, that sinking thing, but now I don't freeze up. I don't lean in even further involuntarily.
Yeah. So it's I've got this for me actually fear of heights came as an adult. I have like a traumatic experience with heights where this is crazy. This might be the story here. So I don't think I wrote about this story actually, and I never like published it or anything like this. It's hard to tell the story. I get goosebumps actually every time I tell this story, and it has to do with the fear of heights. I had an opportunity to go ice climbing when I lived in Canada. I had a Canadian bucket list, and that was one of them. And a coworker that I have used to be a mountaineering guide in the Himalayas, just base jumping, just a total badass. I mean, he's awesome. And so I told him this story and like these Canadian bucket lists. I want to go ice fishing and blah, blah, blah. And so I'm like, I'd like to go ice climbing. He's like, I'll take you ice climbing. So he shows me this thing called the Booming Ice Chasm, which is in the Crow's Nest. It's awesome, man. I'm telling you, this is like, and so he guided National Geographic into it when they discovered this thing. Okay. You can almost look out of his house and see this thing. And they didn't discover it till recently because it's actually a cave into this mountain that's at like a 65-degree, it's an alternating slope, not straight down, slope into this mountain, a sheet of pure ice. It's just a sheet of ice. And so we went up there, he got his friends. So there's 4 of us as an expedition, and we climb up this mountain, and I'm completely out of shape. And he's known that I've done some of these crazy adventures of mine, and we had talked about some of my crazy stories. And so he knew I was keen and I was down. He would not normally take someone that was as green as me on this type of trip, which I was really lucky for that. And I'm glad I held my own for the most part. But we go up, and it's like a 5-hour hike up this avalanche chute, and then we have to traverse across these rocks to get into the cave. So we're traversing across these rocks, and we have crampons on. So those are like the boots with spikes on them. And we're walking across half rock, half snow. And those crampons are not used for rock. It sounds like nails on a chalkboard. And I actually have this on GoPro. Before we started this, the people who we did this trip was, and right before we started the traverse, we're sitting like almost halfway up this mountain overlooking the valley, and we see we got 4 of us, right? My friend who's the guide, myself, his best man at his wedding, who's a preacher, and a cave rescuer, the local guy who, if you get stuck in a cave, he comes to save you. So we got so this is the 4 of us, right? It sounds like a joke about who's going to enter a bar, right? and so we traverse across these rocks, and there's actually mountain goats below us. That's how high we are up in on this mountain, and I can see them. And we don't have ropes, and I'm looking down, and it's just unbelievable. Little rocks are falling, and we get to a section where it's kind of like a slate rock face for about, I don't know, maybe 8 feet. And that's a big distance when there's nothing really to hold on to. And so I'm actually right behind the preacher, and now he's backing up. He's backing up to me because he's kind of getting nervous about what's happening. And I don't really have anywhere to go as he's backing up, because he doesn't want to cross this. So he's trying to figure it out, but he's backing up to me, and I'm trying to calm him down. And I'm actually really happy that he's freaking out, because I'm freaking out. But I don't want anyone to know I'm freaking out, because it's my first trip with him, right? And I know freaking out isn't the thing you're supposed to do, right? You just have to remain calm. 99% of the time, it's remaining calm. So I'm sitting there trying to talk him down, like relax him, even though I'm panicked. And like the sound of my voice, I'm like, it's okay, man, I swear. Like on the GoPro. It's good. It's hilarious. And so then finally, he makes his way across, and I make my way across, and no big deal. And we go into the cave, we get on ropes at this point, and we rappel down into this ice sheet. And I'm telling you, this was some of the craziest things, something you're going to never imagine in your life. This is a bright blue sheet of ice that goes all the way down, and you can't even talk to your friend because the echo, that's why it's called the booming ice chasm, is because frozen stalactites will fall down and you'll just hear boom come out of it. And so we get down about halfway, we see a 30-foot tall ice column, take some photos, unbelievable. And then we realize we're a little too tired to go all the way to the bottom. It was about, don't quote me on this, I think it's about over 700 feet deep down to the bottom, where there's so if you've slipped and fell off of the rope, you just literally slip and slide to your death. I don't know if that's too bad of a way to go out. Slip and slides are kind of fun, but it's pretty wild. Anyways, so the reason I'm telling this story is a bit ridiculous. So we climb out, we're off ropes, and I'm exhausted. Like my body's in full survival mode. I'm shaking. When you leave a gym after a huge set, and your legs are giving out every step you take, you're kind of falling into the next step. That's where I'm at. I'm actually falling into the next step. I've drank all the water, I've got water and Gatorade, but your body just can't process those sugars enough, and just sheer exhaustion from having to pick into the ice and pull myself up every foot, and then you have to kick in and climb out. And so I'm okay. On the ropes, it was amazing, but then we have to traverse back across, right? And we go to traverse back across, and this is where the hair on my arms is starting to stand up to telling this story. My heart rate's rising, and so we're walking across, and I'm falling into each step. And I told the guys, I said, guys, I need you to set up a safety rope. I need you to set up a rope so we cross, because I got to hold on and clip in across these. I can't do this on the same way out. And everyone's pretty tired. And so we get to that slate rock section, and those guys, they have done so much mountaineering and so much climbing that they're used to that, right? They weren't as intimidated or scared or probably as exhausted as I was. So he actually set up his line after that. He didn't set up his line for that. He set it up a few feet after that for the rest of the traverse, not even the scariest part that I entirely wanted it for, which I should have been a little more descriptive when I said, can you set up the safety line? I made a mistake, and I assumed he knew exactly where I was talking about, right? So I get to the section, and I'm frozen, right? I don't know what to do. There's not really a place to grab your hands on. And so I got mittens or gloves, and there's not really anything you can do. Your ice picks don't really matter, because you can kind of find these little little places to put on the ledge, but it's kind of this slaty rock that can flake off, and you don't want to put all your weight on just that little amount of, that's too much pounds per square inch, right? On the point of your axe. And then you're just on the point of your crampons too. And you can hear them like nails on each other. It's scary, and it was, and I was looking down this cliffside, just like, holy shit, this is it. Like, this is my time. I turned off my GoPro because I knew my GoPro would survive and there'd be footage of it, and I wouldn't. And I didn't want my mother to watch that video. Yeah. Right. And that was the thought that was going through my head. That right there was like, what kind of weird opinions do I have going through my head when I'm sitting here going, this is it, and I'm right there over the edge, and you wouldn't believe it, but of all people, the preacher reaches out and extends to me his hand.
Oh,
he's like,
man.
I got you. And I look up, I'm like, God, and I'm not a religious man very much, I was raised Christian and everything, but that was one of the closest I've ever felt in my life to this day to it being the end of my life. And a preacher of all people who could have been on that trip was a preacher extending his hands out to me. I don't know. I just felt like, yeah, man. And I grabbed his hand. I took 2 steps across that slate rock, and I was totally fine. And I just couldn't believe it, man. And it was at the end, you just sit on your butt and you slide down this whole snowy ice chute, and you use your ice pick as like a little rudder, and you have to be really careful because you could just technically, if you start going too fast, your ice pick will launch out of your hands, dislocate your shoulder or something, and you just again slip and slide to your death, right? But at this point, I'm like, it's over, so I'm like, over. I'm going down, but that's actually probably more dangerous than anything I had done, and so we're just ruddering down and we're exhausted. It's probably the best shitty pizza I've ever had in my life after that when we got down. But I wrote this story down, and I meant to like share it on social media and everything, but I could never come to like sharing it because it almost seems like it's a religious expedition, I don't know, but it was really the closest I've been to death. And ever since then, I now have some sort of traumatic fear of heights, which I never had before. I've been skydiving, bungee jumping all previously, and I've stood at the edge of 700-foot meter waterfalls in Iceland, done a lot of things with heights. And now I get just enough little bit of vertigo when I get close to an edge. And it's like, it's not the fear of heights, it's more the fear of falling, I think.
Yeah. What happens at the end of the falling?
Yeah. And just something like, I think my body's telling me, you've been here before, you're not comfortable with it, take a step back. It's something in my brain and in my instinct, like evolution, as you were close to dying here, you shouldn't be here. Enjoy that view, look over and step back a little bit more, and I think that's like your brain as a survivalist, as an animal, is moving on and saying, whoa, you've done this before, right? Don't do it again or something like that. And so that was just a really intense experience for me, and probably one of the closest moments one of the highest levels of fear and closest moments of death I've experienced.
That like got my heart rate up. You're just kind of explaining it, but yeah, it seems like you basically rewired part of your brain. To like you ingrained that fear in yourself as like a survival instinct. I mean, that's why humanity has evolved to where we are, for so many of those experiences through time that saved our evolutionary predecessors over time to learn.
Exactly. And so back to the original point was like, there's different types of fear. So that's like a traumatic one, and that helps us evolve and move forward as a species. And then that's learned fear. That was the next one I was going to say, was you have these childhood fears and you have these learned fears, which is a fear that someone else instills in you. And so we're very influenceable people, right? Whether or not you're a Facebook or Instagram influencer or not. So we can be influenced so easily without us knowing it. And, some corporations make a lot of money influencing fears into us. Hollywood does an amazing job of influencing fears into us. That's what scary movies are, thriller movies are, is what's the next fear that no one knows that they have. Jaws is a perfect example.
I was going to use that because more people die from dogs all over the world than sharks.
I'm pretty sure vending machines kill more people than sharks each year. I'm not certain on that, but or coconuts. I think coconuts falling on people does.
Yeah, that doesn't make a good movie though.
No, it does. Hey man, who knows?
They made Sharknado.
And Piranha 3 Double D.
It can be done, Trev. It can be done.
I'll wait. Out in theaters this fall.
Let's start a GoFundMe. Yeah, it's crazy to see how much you can learn to be scared of something, and I think you got to be careful with that. Is what's entertainment and what's marketing. People used to knock on the door, and now everyone's got a Ring doorbell. You used to answer the door, and you used to look through the peephole. So that's a whole new fear. People don't even want to come to the front door anymore. They can just look on their smartphone. Probably from enough people watching a movie where someone sticks a silencer to the peephole and you look through it and boom, I don't know. That's a
or No Country for Old Men.
That's a perfect
pneumatic thing. Yeah.
No one's picking up hitchhikers anymore because of that too, right?
Yep.
You go to Europe, people hitchhike around the world. People still hitchhike all over the world. I picked up over 30 people hitchhiking when I was driving around Europe. Hitchhike is very common. In the U.S., no. You're lucky if you get a ride, if you run out of gas or something, and then what does that mean? Well, got to buy AAA, now your insurance coverage has to, because no one's going to pick you up anymore. So, no one's going to stop and help you change your tire anymore because that's a weirdo. Who could that be? So there's these learned fears that you get from either movies or marketing programs or your parents, like you're just a 3-year-old kid and you're going through a book of animals and they say crocodile and they're like, ooh, crocodile, scary. And you're like, and my niece says that, I got a 4-year-old niece now. She's cute and smart and she's sassy as hell. And she likes animals and she comes over and she's like, Uncle Evan, do you like crocodiles? And I'm like, I love crocodiles. And she's like, oh, aren't they scary? I'm like, yeah, but I grew up watching Steve Irwin, like it depends on how you were taught and what you grew up, right? The things that people teach you to be afraid of, and you don't even know it. So think about what fears you have. Are they your fears or did someone else teach you about those? And are they because we've evolved to be scared of them? Probably because crocodiles can eat us.
Yeah.
Right. People are afraid of snakes because some snakes can kill us, right? Not all snakes, but some snakes, right? So I think that has a lot to do with it. You should just, like you said, say yes and go do it. And don't let, just because you don't know how to get outside and you don't know how to pick up a new sport, like go on some social media platform, try to find a group for it, follow a hashtag and send some messages. Hey man, like, can I learn about this? Or can you teach me something? That's it. It's pretty easy.
Just get past that first initial step. And then you have that support system usually.
Yeah. I mean, if I can do it, anyone else can, because I'm not an expert at all this stuff, and you ask the people I go on these adventures for, I'm usually the rookie, and I get to learn from them. So
you got to start somewhere.
Exactly.
Well, thanks for having me on, guys. No. I know I talk a lot.
No, and like you've done so many things. I think at some point in the future, you're going to be coming back on.
Oh, I would love to, man. I love these kind of conversations. I don't get to have them all the time.
No, that's great, man.
And what you guys are doing is great, man. I love the idea when you said that you were trying to do a podcast with getting people interested and trying to get people more outdoors. I can't tell you how many people I know who just say, hey, like, I don't even know where to start, So this is a perfect idea, and to be open-minded and get people and introduce people and find ways. Like you said, here's their Instagram. Like the woman you had on the last podcast. How awesome was that?
Yeah.
Getting women out there in whitewater rafting and, getting people involved in sports that they thought that maybe there was a hurdle or a barrier and said, that's not for me. Now she was a perfect example. So I appreciate that. You guys are doing a good job.
We try. We're slowly learning how to do this, and hopefully people think that we're getting better with every episode. But it might be debatable. But we're trying. We're doing our best.
I think they're all pretty good, man. You know, the podcasts are podcasts. Every single one's different. So I think this is pretty good.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. But yeah, man. If people want to see what adventures you're up to, how do they find all that out?
I got E.Van down by the river on Instagram. That's probably the best way if you want to follow me. It's my name's Evan, right? So a van down by the river, and there's a whole story behind that too. But you're gonna find yourself living in a van down by the river.
I was gonna say every time I read that on Instagram, that's how my brain says it.
That's Absolutely. So yeah, so that's how. So van down, van down by the river, and I tried to post some of my adventures on there. I think that's probably the best thing. It's, it's an open page. Whatever. I share whatever in my life and everything. So it's not like I take it seriously too much. But some of them are jokes. You might get offended, and then some of them I try to get pretty deep on and share my feelings on. So.
That's good. I know I've enjoyed following you for years, so
thanks.
You're doing something right. But yeah, about us. So I've been thinking about this. I realized we need a logo for this podcast. So whoever's listening to this, if you're artistically inclined or know someone that's artistically inclined, reach out to us, and we'll work. It wouldn't be a pro bono thing. We'll work out a deal, because Kyle and I are not artists. Yeah, reach out and we'll figure it out. But yeah, you can follow me on Instagram. It's at Trevor Bowman on Instagram. Podcast, you can reach out to us over email at adventuringformeremortals@gmail.com. Our Instagram for the podcast is at meremortalpod. We have a Discord server that it's all in the show notes. And we're still looking for those reviews online that I'm supposed to be reading. We haven't got any reviews yet. We have a couple of ratings. So if you put a review out there on your podcast distribution thing of choice, I will read it on the podcast. So that's about all we got.
Talks too much. That's what it is.
Well, we'll see. But yeah, I think that's all we've got for this month. So until next month, we'll see you then, man.
Thank you, guys. You have a good night.
Thanks, man.
Thank you. Yeah. Take care. See you guys.